I bet you didn't know that this week is National Self-Care Awareness Week. Well, now you do. The aim of this campaign is to encourage us all to take better care of ourselves mentally and physically. I couldn't support it more. Our NHS is frequently overstretched, and more of us are making poor choices which damage our health. And when we do, we're expecting the NHS to fix us. We all bleat on about our NHS and how it's a loved institution and how we want it to continue. But if that's really the case, we need to start easing its burden. And if we weren't, then the NHS should prioritise its spending on illnesses that people do not bring on themselves.
Michelle, this is a really important issue, and it's something that, for me, is very personal. My father, who was a very active soldier for many years, very fit man, even after he retired, he was always playing sport, and he smoked like a chimney. And sadly died of lung cancer. And I saw him suffer for 1.5 years. And we all said, come on, Dad, stop smoking, you know, it's bad for your health. But he didn't. Now, there are still, sadly, people who smoke in this country when everyone knows it's bad for your health and it can kill you. Almost 20% of the population smokes. My brother, having seen his father pass away, still smokes. Now, you know, there's human nature. And if one has to encourage people to be healthy. There are more obese people today, many more than there were when I was born. So, you know, that is an issue. It's a big issue. And the other side of it is the National Health Service is, as you said, so stretched. It's about 9% of GDP, over £120 billion a year, and we still can't make it work. And then you look at a country like, on the other extreme, America, their spending on health, public and private together, is 17% of GDP. Now, if we were able to spend 17% of GDP on our health, wow, that would mean so much more resource in every way. Now, it's not necessarily the only solution. We could do what we're doing much better. So there are two issues here. One is, have we got enough health spending and is it being done properly? The second is people being informed and being encouraged to be healthier all the time.
But what I don't understand is how you can either do what you're suggesting by enforcing it, by saying, OK, we're not going to, which I think one or two local health authorities have said, we are not going to treat you if you smoke. But I don't see otherwise how you get people to voluntarily stop smoking, stop drinking, and the rest of it. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? People last night were saying, we hardly had obesity in this country in the 60s and 70s. You know, it's a product of the 70s and onwards. And you say, well, why? And it's about processed food. And it's about alcohol, and it's about other things. How do you stop people, how do you get people to change voluntarily from that?
Well, I don't know if you do voluntarily, because I'm obviously very sorry about your father, but just to put some context into this, 40% of deaths in England are related to basically self-choice behaviour, smoking, drinking, eating the wrong things, inactivity. 4 million people have diabetes, 90% of which is type 2, which is behavioural and lifestyle choices. And just to put some money onto that, that means that £240 million a week, £240 million a week is spent on treating diabetes.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, what I would do...
How do you do it?
Well, what I want is these conversations. The reason I picked this topic is because people are not talking enough about personal responsibility. And, you know, if you've got two patients, one of which is persisting in smoking or being inactive or eating unhealthily and being obese, and then you've got a 2-year-old child that's got leukemia or something like that, and there is only so much money in the pot, unfortunately, I'll be making very tough funding decisions and saying that the funding has to go to that child who's done nothing wrong, who's not made poor choices or anything like that, and you should be prioritising your funding.
But, Michelle, the NHS is partly to blame for this because people can't take responsibility. Let's look at obesity. You know, we have this thing around obesity. People will tell you to stop smoking or you'll die. But if you're fat, if you're overweight, you go to a doctor, they can't tell you you're overweight. If you have a child who's overweight, you have to say they're alternatively sized. People who get fat now, they're not told to lose weight or they're going to die. We spend precious NHS on counselling, on hypnotherapy, on gastric bands. We baby these people, so they're not allowed. We tell them it's a disease, an addiction, obesity. It is not. It's a totally self-inflicted condition, and yet we baby people. So how can they take responsibility? I agree with you, they should, but if you're fat, you don't have to.
But there are other things that also come into play. For example, encouraging sport. on the one hand, we should be doing so
But we
much
do,
more.
Karen.
No, but the playing fields of schools being sold off and closed down all the time.
Well, not just the school, there are plenty places outside
I went
the
to a
school.
boarding school. I visited a boarding school in India, North India, in the foothills of the Himalayas, and it was on a really steep hillside, and the students had to walk up and down to their classes, to their boarding houses, and the headmaster said, we have no overweight children at this school because of all the exercise that they get. So if everyone's encouraged to exercise, even at an older age, even after you've retired, if you walk every day, if you exercise...
We've
people should be
normalised
encouraged.
obesity in this country, Karen. We've normalised it. We just make everything bigger for them. We make bigger doors, bigger chairs, bigger ambulances.
Seats.
We've
But also,
normalised it.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but I think that they should write on a Mars bar, you will need to run for, 3 hours to work this Mars bar off. And you're right about the normalisation, because they've done studies which show that people don't think they're fat anymore, and they don't think they need
Or
to lose
everybody
weight
is, so it doesn't matter.
because it's been normalised. And if you look at newsreel from the 50s or the 60s, everyone's skinny. You could see ribs on the beach, and you hardly ever see a rib apart from on the catwalk.
OK, but the point is, how do you impose what you want? Which is basically, you're going to say to people when they come into a... Doctors have a Hippocratic oath that they've got to treat people. Someone comes in and you say, sorry, unless you go away and lose 2 stone, I'm not treating you.
Well, no, you don't
Why
say
not?
that. What you do is you don't pussyfoot around the issue. You say you are 3 stones overweight. This is going to give you... You're going to get arthritis, diabetes...
Why not? Why
But
can't you
they
say
don't take
so
any
much?
notice of that.
Well, why
Instead,
not?
we're doing
They
bariatric
don't.
surgery,
It is like
expensive.
if you ever go to a medical and you say, how many units of alcohol do you
So is the
consume?
alternative to say
Everyone
it's not
lies.
your fault?
Everybody lies.
No, but-
and they double it.
But is the
why
alternative
can't
to
you
say it's
do?
not your
That's
fault?
what I'm saying. That's
Why
what,
can't you say what you
that's
suggested?
pretty authoritarian stuff. And
What, if you don't lose weight and get healthy,
If you
I
don't-
won't
you
give you
could
this
die.
treatment?
I'm not going to give you the treatment. It's not that you could die. They say that anyway. It's
you can't.
I'm not going to give you the treatment that keeps you going.
No, well, look, health is a human right. Okay, it's a very dangerous topic. Everyone is entitled to health. And it, for example, it saddens me in so many countries
Hang on,
where
no,
it is...
hang on. I don't
Access
say
to
it's
health.
not.
Access to health is a human right. But I just want to
Now,
go
let me
another
challenge
point.
that sentence.
Yes.
Health is a human right.
Access to health care
Not for
is
every
a human
single
right.
Not for
thing.
not
It is-
for
it-
conditions.
It's basically a human right, the ability to see a doctor if you are not well. Now, the thing is, why are you not well? Look at obesity with children. Another reason for that is the internet age that we live on. Children are spending far too much time behind iPads and screens and phones instead of exercising and leading an outdoor life. We need to encourage that more. Jamie Oliver, by the way, had this huge thing about children eating more healthy food.
Yeah.
Now, you try and force children to eat salads and things which they don't. I'd rather they ate a good, wholesome meal and
But how
ate properly
are you going
and
to get a kid
exercise.
to do exercise when their parents don't do it? How do you
Parents
do that?
have to encourage it.
But
Parents are to blame
you're
a lot
talking about
for this.
generations of people, parents, where they might not do that. They don't do that. So then what's
We
the
need to
alternative?
encourage them to do that.
But we do
it's,
that.
It's much. We need to do
There's
much
so
more.
much
We need to do
information
much
out
more.
there.
But you are
Michelle,
also
doctors
talking...
should tell patients they're overweight, and they
Yes.
should call a spade a spade.
Yes,
It's the only way.
they should still tell them they're
And they
overweight.
can.
And they do.
And they
They
should.
do.
And
The
they
question
should.
In a
is,
very gentle
what
way.
do you then do about it if they then say, fine, that's the way I am?
So what you could say is,
Well-
you need an operation for whatever, come back in 8 weeks' time having lost 2 stones, because if I perform it on you
Yeah.
now, it's dangerous for you. That's what you do. You send them off and make them lose weight before they have the treatment.
Or you just be crystal clear with them and say, if you don't change your health, you will die prematurely.